Jackson wiped down the counter of his small coffee shop for the third time that morning, his eyes drifting toward the chronometer mounted on the wall. The station's artificial day cycle was just beginning, and soon the usual crowd of miners, traders, and maintenance workers would flood through his doors. He had opened Jackson's Java on Frontier Station nearly 2 years ago after retiring from the Merchant Marine. It wasn't much, just a cramped space wedged between a recycling depot and a ship parts store, but it was his. The door chimed, and Jackson looked up expecting his first customer. Instead, he found himself staring at something he'd never seen before. The creature stood barely 3 feet tall, covered in soft, silvery fur that seemed to shimmer under the station's lighting. Large, luminous amber eyes dominated its face, set above a small, cat-like nose. 2 oversized ears twitched nervously atop its head, and a long, fluffy tail wrapped protectively around its legs. The being wore what appeared to be a child's pressure suit, the kind designed for emergency evacuations. "We're open," Jackson said slowly, keeping his voice gentle. The creature was clearly young, a cub, kit, or whatever its species called their children. The small alien took a tentative step inside, its nose twitching as it sampled the air. Those enormous eyes locked onto the coffee brewing behind the counter, and Jackson could have sworn he saw them light up with recognition. "You like coffee?" he asked, gesturing to the pot. The cub's tail uncoiled slightly, and it nodded, a surprisingly human gesture that made Jackson smile. It reached into a pouch on its suit and pulled out a small data chip, holding it up with tiny, 4-fingered hands. Jackson took the chip and inserted it into his translation pad. A moment later, synthesized words filled the air. "Mother says I must learn human customs. This place smells like home." "Where's your mother, little one?" Jackson asked, concern creeping into his voice. Station regulations were strict about unaccompanied minors, regardless of species. The cub's ears drooped. The translator spoke again. "Mother works in agricultural bay, very busy. I finished learning pod early, wanted to explore." Jackson sighed. He should probably contact station security, but something about the small creature's lonely posture tugged at him. He'd been lonely too when he first arrived on this distant outpost. "Tell you what," he said, crouching down to the cub's eye level. "How about I make you something special, but then we call your mother deal?" The ears perked up immediately, and an enthusiastic nod followed. Jackson stood and examined his coffee selection. He couldn't just give a child, alien or otherwise, a full cup of caffeinated coffee, but he had an idea. He mixed warm milk with just a splash of decaf, added a generous dollop of vanilla syrup and a sprinkle of cinnamon, then topped it with a mountain of whipped cream. He served it in his smallest cup with a bright yellow straw. The cub's eyes widened to saucer proportions. It clutched the cup with both hands, careful not to spill a drop, and took a tentative sip. The reaction was immediate and utterly joyful. The tail shot straight up, the ears quivered, and a sound like a cross between a purr and a chirp emanated from the small creature. "Good?" Jackson asked, grinning despite himself. The translator couldn't seem to keep up with the rapid-fire squeaks and chirps that followed, but the meaning was clear enough. Over the next hour, as Jackson served his regular customers, the small alien sat at the corner table, making that warm milk drink last as long as possible. Jackson learned through brief exchanges that the cub's name was approximately Whisker Star Dancing, though the translator suggested Orla as the closest human equivalent. She belonged to the Felkari species, recent arrivals to human-controlled space who had been displaced by a dying star system. When Jackson finally contacted Orla's mother through the station directory, the response was frantic. A tall, elegant Felkari female burst through the door 15 minutes later, her fur standing on end with worry. She rushed to Orla, checking her over with obvious maternal concern before turning to Jackson. "I am Sasira," the translator relayed her words. "I apologize profusely. My daughter has never wandered off before. Since we arrived on the station, she has been sad, homesick. She's welcome here any time, Jackson found himself saying. She was no trouble at all. Sasira's whiskers twitched in what might have been surprise. You would allow this? Humans are known to be territorial about their establishments. Jackson shrugged. Humans are known for a lot of things, not all of them accurate. Besides, she seems to like my coffee, well, my milk and vanilla anyway. Orla tugged on her mother's sleeve, chattering excitedly and pointing at the empty cup. Sasira listened, then looked at Jackson with an expression he couldn't quite read. She says it tastes like morning on our homeworld, Sasira said softly. We had a beverage made from roasted seeds that smelled similar. She says your place feels warm, like our home did before the star began to die. Something in Jackson's chest tightened. He'd lost his own home once, not to a dying star, but to choices and circumstances that had seemed insurmountable at the time. He understood that particular flavor of homesickness. She can come by whenever she wants, he said firmly. I'll make sure she gets back to you safely. And so began an unlikely friendship. Orla appeared at Jackson's Java almost every day after her learning pod sessions ended. She would claim her corner table, and Jackson would prepare her special coffee, never quite the same twice, as he experimented with different flavors and temperatures to see what made her happiest. Other customers grew accustomed to the small, furry presents, and some of the regulars even started bringing little treats from the station's market. A crystal that caught the light in interesting ways, a data pad loaded with Felkari children's stories, a small blanket in traditional Felkari patterns. What surprised Jackson most was how much joy the small alien brought to his shop. Miners who usually grabbed their coffee and left in silence began staying longer, sharing stories with Orla through the translator. The child's innocent questions about human culture sparked conversations and laughter. An engineering crew adopted her as an unofficial mascot, teaching her human card games during their breaks. One day, about 6 weeks after Orla first wandered into his shop, Jackson found himself facing an unexpected visitor. Commander Zhang from Station Administration stood at his counter, her expression unreadable. Mr. Jackson, I need to speak with you about the Felkari child who frequents your establishment. Jackson's heart sank. He'd been waiting for this, the official reprimand, the citation for harboring an unaccompanied minor, maybe even a fine. Sir, Commander Zhang continued, and Jackson noticed the slight smile tugging at her lips. The Felkari delegation has requested a formal meeting with you. It seems your coffee shop has become something of a cultural phenomenon among their community. A what? Word spread about a human who welcomed a lost Felkari child and made her feel at home. Other Felkari families have been asking where they can find this place. You've apparently done more for human Felkari relations in 2 months than our diplomatic corps managed in 6. Jackson blinked. I just gave a kid some warm milk and a safe place to sit. Exactly, Commander Zhang said. You treated her like she mattered, like she belonged. That's what we're supposed to be doing out here on the frontier, building communities, not just trade agreements. She paused. The Felkari want to thank you officially. I suggest you accept. It's good politics and frankly good press for the station. The ceremony was small but moving. Sasira presented Jackson with a traditional Felkari gratitude token, a small, intricately carved piece of crystal from their home system, one of the few artifacts they'd managed to bring when they fled. Orla stood beside her mother, wearing what appeared to be formal attire, her fur brushed to a glossy sheen. You gave my daughter back her smile, Sasira said through the translator, though her eyes said even more. In doing so, you reminded our people that we can find home even in strange places, among strange faces. This is a gift beyond measure. Jackson knelt down to Orla's level one more time. You're always welcome at my shop, kiddo, always. Orla surprised him by launching forward and wrapping her small arms around his neck, her purr vibrating against his chest. When she pulled back, she handed him a drawing she'd made, a crude but enthusiastic sketch of a human figure, him, presumably, standing next to a tiny Felcari in front of what was unmistakably his coffee shop. Above it, in carefully practiced human letters, she'd written, "My favorite." As Jackson returned to his shop that evening, the small crystal token in his pocket and Orla's drawing already mounted on the wall behind the counter, he realized something profound. He'd come to this frontier station looking for a quiet retirement, a simple life after years of wandering the stars. Instead, he'd found purpose in the most unexpected place, in the happiness of a small alien child who just wanted a taste of home. Humanity's greatest strength, Jackson had always believed, wasn't their technology or their military might. It was their capacity to see the lonely, the lost, and the displaced and say simply, "You belong here too, one cup of coffee or warm milk with vanilla and cinnamon, at a time." And every morning after that, when Orla came bounding through his door, tail held high and ears perked with excitement, Jackson knew he'd found something precious too. Not just a customer, not just a friend, but proof that home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's a feeling, shared between beings who should have been strangers but chose to be family instead. That, Jackson thought as he prepared Orla's special drink with extra whipped cream, was the most human thing of all.